Welcome to the India Today Business Today studio here at the World Economic Forum at Davos, and with me a very special guest, Abhijit Dubey, the CEO of NTT DATA, a company that contributes almost 30% of a $100 billion turnover of NTT, the parent company. Abhijit, pleasure to have you here with us. Your company is a well-known name and a storied history, but we are here at Davos, and this is not a company-specific conversation. I want to really pick up the strand on the next phase of digital-led the growth and transformation that you see happening, because from an Indian context, digital has been the big story for years. There are multiple phases in our digital story over the last 30 years, and I think we've done pretty well for ourselves. But more at a technology level and a global level, where are the next disruptions and the transformations coming from?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. It's a privilege. Well, I think obviously, you cannot have any conversation that's not AI-led. So let me start with that. And generally speaking, AI has three different components to it. It's individual productivity, it's process transformation using agentics, and it's sort of discovery of new stuff, whether it's drugs or materials or new products and services that get launched in the market, right? And I think we will see, last year when I was here, I was like, 2025 was the year of the advent of agentic AI. I think 2026 and beyond is sort of really taking it to enterprise scale. And that's a lot more than just building agents, right? I mean, building agents is the easy part. Actually making sure they work in a responsible way with the outcomes that you want in a complex enterprise setting with a lot of legacy is actually the hardest part.
And just to add to that, and therefore, what kind of productivity gains have you yourself experienced in the deployment internally from AI?
Yeah, so if I separate between sort of service offerings that we provide to our clients, right? So consulting
work,
systems integration, outsourcing managed services, versus sort of how we deploy it in our internal operations. So internal operations, we are targeting about 20 to 30% productivity. And that's limited because a lot of fundamental work has to be done in terms of data architecture, unifying your enterprise systems, etc. And I think long term, I think you can get to about 50% if you get it right.
That's biggest number that I have heard from any CEO, and I've been talking to several with regard to the productivity benefits. So that's a great number.
But that's the aspiration. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
On the consulting software development. To be honest, the productivity numbers are not as big as they are made out to be. I think you see about 20%. Now, greenfield application development has higher productivity, whereas brownfield, if you're doing it in the context of an enterprise landscape where you're integrating to different systems, you get a lot less productivity because it's very complex. So I think the real economic benefit up to 30-40% in those is still to be realized.
Okay.
A lot of companies who are currently looking at AI adoption are also in some ways figuring out whether they should build capability internally, what is also called the SLM strategy. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people work with large consulting firms, including yours. For a company in the Indian context, what's the best strategy that they could adopt, given the nature of the Indian market, given the fact that some of these successful models have been developed overseas, and you're in some ways just a user?
Yeah. Well, I will start by saying that there is still a pretty significant services opportunity around a whole agentic transformation. So, rough ballpark, building agents, let's say it costs $1. The reading all the data readiness is about $4, right? Actually making sure the agents operate in an ecosystem, so let's call it the architecture. So multi-agent orchestration, token optimization, memory, etc. That's another $3.
So 1 plus 4 plus 3.
And then change management, because it's not just about injecting technology into an existing process, it's about reimagining how work gets done, which requires a lot of change management. So that's another $2 upfront, and then on an ongoing basis, it's continuous change management. So my view is there's still a lot of services opportunity around this ecosystem. And even the models today, even if you take insurance as an example, and if you're deploying it in healthcare in the US and health plans in the US as an example, every state has a different set of regulations. So the guardrails that you have to build on common models is very bespoke. And that is something that players like us will do at the end of the day. So I'm still optimistic there's a lot of services opportunities for players like us.
Continuing to wear your consultant hat, I want to follow this up with regard to what do you think will be that maybe one or two or three sectors where you will see the most significant transformation at scale on account of AI and its use?
I think we'll see it across all sectors, to be honest. Now, interestingly, what we are seeing right now is that highly regulated sectors are actually having more impact because the regulation already exists, so you don't feel the burden of self-regulating, so you know what parameters you're working on, what guardrails they are.
Give me an example.
So banking as an example, you see it. So those are, and insurance as an example, in regulated insurance sectors. I think there are other sectors where it's not as regulated, where the onus is on you to self-regulate and build the guardrails, etc. Adoption is a little bit slower. But ultimately, I think the benefit equation is massive across all sectors.
Okay.
I had the vice chairperson of Bharti Group right here half an hour ago, and he said in response to a similar question that spam calls, which are a huge issue in India, you know the kind of numbers that we have. He said AI has helped us reduce it very, very significantly, and it was manually not possible. The industry has been struggling. So that's one example. Any other healthcare, for example, drug discovery, or any other examples that you would be comfortable talking about?
Well, I think there's a lot of action happening on discovery of new things, and the discovery of new things could be either drugs and or materials, right? And so there's lots. I think that's where a lot of the action, early results have been, to be honest. And even if it's not discovery of new drugs, accelerating the clinical trial process for new drugs. So you shrink it from months and years to sort of, by a factor of 10, if you may, because you now can generate both human as well as synthetic sort of data on clinical trials. So examples like that already happening.
I also want you to talk about what you do in India, because many of my viewers, especially those who follow the listed equity space more closely, wouldn't perhaps be aware of all that you're doing in the Indian context, but a lot of companies work. India is the back office of the world. We have 2,500 GCCs in the country. What's your company's footprint in India?
So India is about 40,000 employees for us. So after Japan,
Not 4,000.
it's 40,000.
40,000.
Yes. So the whole NTT conglomerate, which is a $100 billion conglomerate, about 300,000 employees globally. After Japan, India is the second largest employee population for us. So just think about that. And we've been in India for a very long time. The way I describe our India business is in 4 different pillars. So pillar number 1 is we are a digital infrastructure provider into India. So we still are, I believe. We have been the number 1 data center provider in the market for a while. We still are, despite a lot more competition coming in.
Yeah.
We also have submarine cables that have now landed into India. So both in Chennai and Mumbai, it's called the MIST cable. By the way, in the data centers, we've invested $3 billion already, and we have a plan to invest $1.5 billion over the next few years as well. Submarine cable, we've invested a lot to get them into India, so through Southeast Asia from Japan. So that's one business, digital infrastructure. Second business is India for India. So we have a services business that is solely devoted to serving Indian clients, both public and private sector. And then the third is, obviously, like most of the services players, India is the innovation and delivery hub globally. It's the largest for us across all service lines and practices. And then finally, we actually have a payments business in India as well. So, which actually comes from Japan, but they have a payments infrastructure business in India.
So, viewers,
among the storied Japanese corporations, one more, and we know that our infrastructure build out, logistics, heavy machinery, transportation, Japanese companies, and now increasingly in the banking space, just in the recent past, we've seen some big ticket investments proposals that come through. I want you to talk about a bit more about the growth opportunities that India continues to offer. Beyond GCCs, beyond being a back office, what do you think are the possible future growth opportunities that corporations like yours would like to tap into in India?
So we still see enormous growth in sort of the digital infrastructure space in India, despite the competition. But I think there's a real demand for, just like everywhere else in the world, for AI infrastructure. As India as an end market, the private sector is professionalizing at a very rapid extent over the last few years. And so that's reaching the maturity levels that you would expect of global corporations. So we think that's a pretty attractive space to be in as well. And then, what you describe as sort of the back office hub, or what we say is the innovation and delivery hub, I think there is a real opportunity for India to become sort of the AI hub for the world, right? But the fundamentally what we've done, if you look at the IT services industry over the last 20 years, right, it's been, we may not like the term, but it's been about cost arbitrage at the end of the day. And I think now we're going to move into a world of skills arbitrage, where as IT service providers, we have better skills on AI than, of course, our clients, and therefore they come to us, right? That's sort of the name of the game. And India has the opportunity to really be that hub. But I think there's a lot of things that will need to happen, everything from education, college systems, to how we think about training our people, etc. All of that has to happen, and some of it is already happening.
Abhijit, it's very clear from
what you just said, that India is very strategic to your company's footprint. But within India, there are a lot of worries about the strategic nature of high-tech industries and the evolution of AI and what it can mean also on the flip side, really. Mm-hmm. And people worry about loss of data, for example, that tech sovereignty and India being used as a data generating testbed case with free offers for access to AI apps and a lot of that. Is this concern significant according to you? We have not, India and China, the United States and China are AI superpowers. You said we'll be a global AI hub. Should we therefore feel happy about that, or sad that we haven't developed a mass scale LLM of ours so far?
Well, I think we will be in a world of increasing polarization. There is no doubt about that in terms of where we are headed. And I think what that means is, every country will have to think about at what level do we think about sovereignty, right? Because is it at the infrastructure level, starting from chips and servers and compute and storage environments and memory, etc.? Because today, that is pretty much either America or China. And so that would require a whole new level of investments in the country from a research standpoint and R&D standpoint, product development standpoint, manufacturing standpoint. Or is it about data sovereignty, which means all data is ours and only stays in India for the good of India? I think that is actually easier to do, to be honest. Or is it at the model level? Or is it about, India for India? That means only local players play in across the whole stack. Is it the whole stack? Is it elements of the stack? I think these are strategic choices to be made, and they are very complex
if you
choices.
were a policy maker.
What would you advise? What kind of choice would you want us to exercise?
I think the real value in my mind, the real value of AI is the use cases that you unleash on top. Otherwise, everything is not really smart or intelligent, right? And so if we can unleash mass intelligence into India and drive a level of productivity that we've never seen before, that can jumpstart, significantly sort of where we want to be and where the growth aspirations are. To me, that is the most important thing. Are we really innovating across all sectors, all of the economy at scale?
So that's an interesting
insight. What you seem to be saying is that it's not important to worry about whether we are inventing the wheel, as long as we develop the application cases for the wheel.
Exactly.
That's a good point. As we end this conversation, a bit of your personal journey. You are amongst Indian origin CEOs of global corporations, and we have dozens and dozens, literally hundreds of them, and we all feel very proud of that. Do share a bit of your story to those who may not have read up about you. How's your life arc been to your current job?
Wow, okay. Keep it very short. So I was born in Jamshedpur, so Steel City. Then went to IIT for my IIT Bombay for my undergraduate. Unlike most of my peers who went straight to the United States to do a master's, I did a detour and worked in the oil fields in the Northern Sahara for a few years with a company called Schlumberger, which is a multinational.
Yes.
And then I ultimately did end up at Stanford for my master's, and then those were the dot-com boom days, and unlike every other peer who did a startup,
You did that too.
I did McKinsey. So you can get a pattern. I'm sort of not going with the masses, let's put it that way. And then I thought McKinsey would be a 2-year journey, ended up being a 21-year journey. And then
Wow.
NTT Group, which is a conglomerate, they became a client in sort of the 2011 timeframe. And I was the lead McKinsey partner, but I helped them a lot with the global expansion for 10 years from the outside. So when I started working with them, the business was almost zero outside of Japan. Today we are 20 billion. So I had the privilege of architecting it from the outside for 10 years. And then the last 5 years I've been inside as the CEO. So it's been a journey of a lifetime.
What a fantastic journey. But you spoke about the dot-com boom. Just one final question, and this is a broader strokes one, that is to do with some of the hype that seems to have been built in, especially in the AI valuations space. You think it's a bit overdone?
Well, I've been public, if you've sort of seen, I've been public that we are probably going to see a bit of a correction this year.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because we are the only company on the planet who sees both the demand and the supply side of the equation. So we are a third largest data center provider in the world. So we see the build out of the AI infrastructure. And we are also one of the top IT services firms helping clients, enterprise clients, adopt AI and diffuse AI and get value out of AI, right? And at some point, you see that the build out is happening much faster than the diffusion in the enterprise in terms of demand. And at some point, and that's okay, that's generally how most tech innovations go, but there's a level of divergence at which it doesn't make sense anymore. And there is a level of correction that needs to happen for the supply and demand curves to come together. And my sense is that's going to happen in 2026, but it's going to be short-lived because the potential for AI is so huge. And the escape velocity that it's going to reach, any innovation takes time to reach escape velocity in the enterprise because of legacy. And most other innovations in the past have taken 10 years. I think this is going to be a very short-lived one, 3 to 5 years. And so we're going to have a year where the divergence will come closer, and then the enterprise adoption will really start accelerating, will reach escape velocity, and the curves will converge. So take all of that, a short-term correction, but bounce back after a long-term
And a longer term
growth path. So it does seem to mirror what has happened, in the past with other tech evolutions. But Abhijit, I think it's a very nice explanation of a perspective that you have shared with us. Many people in India, particularly the analyst community, keep writing and talking about this. So I'm really sure that this last answer that he has given will become a lead point for people to understand. Abhijit, I wish you all the very best, and thank you very much for making the time for this conversation. I haven't met anyone from this group for many years. In an earlier life, I was a telecom reporter, so NTT Docomo, many of you might have known in the Indian context. But I'm so glad that I've reconnected with you and your fascinating journey. Thanks once again.
Pleasure's been mine. Thank you very much for having me.
With that, it's a wrap on this conversation. I'll come back with more such interesting guests. Do stay tuned in. Bye-bye. I am here at the World Economic Forum at Davos, and